Welcome to this week of Missouri Politics. On a very busy week, no time for a special guest. We're going to jump right in our opinion maker panel. Representative Tracy McCreery, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Representative LaKeySha Bosley, City of St. Louis, welcome back.
Hello.
David Barklage, Dean of the Missouri Republican Party, welcome back, sir.
Thanks, sir.
And first time on the show, Jared Brown, Chief of Staff Senator Justin Brown from Phelps County. Welcome to this week of Missouri Politics.
Thanks for having me.
David Barklage, you have privately, somewhat publicly, but mostly privately, for a long time predicted there would be issues in the Stenger administration that would someday come to light. I think I'm even one that's been like, oh, really, win. Those things came to light this week. As we tape this, there's reports that the now former county executive will be pleading guilty in federal court. Break down kind of what these allegations stem from, and you've been somebody that's followed this very closely. A lot of your predictions have been true. What part of that has actually come out, and what's going to be pled in court?
Well, I have to admit, though, Tony Messenger and the Post-Dispatch early on wrote article after article, so I don't know if it takes a genie or a whole lot of intelligence to follow, so there was a pattern early. Second, I think you saw the council get very frustrated because they were stonewalled, and so it leads a lot of people to believe that when they were stonewalled on even the most simplest things, that there was fire where they were seeing smoke. So I really do think that Sam Page, Ernie Trachis, that the council, the Post-Dispatch, many people were sort of involved in watching this, come down for a long time.
And the Post does deserve some credit for their reporting.
Absolutely.
On it.
And, they even came out and apologized for the fact that they endorsed him. I don't think you can really hold yourself accountable for knowing how someone's going to act. I had someone tell me that Steve Stenger early in his career on the council helped them, did everything, never asked for anything. I think it was a change when he got to county council. What we're seeing today, or what we're seeing is that he is pled guilty, that he'll be sentenced, and I guess we'll see what else happens to other people that were on the other side of transactions. I do think that the county needs a good cleaning on both sides, of people on the outside and the inside, to be able to move forward and to give the people what they deserve.
Representative McCreery, these are your constituents in St. Louis County. I'm not sure the news of the indictment or the pleading guilty is particularly surprising at this point, but where does St. Louis County go from here? And as you've seen your constituents, I think probably these events weren't surprising, but where do you pivot to?
Right. Unfortunately, they're not surprising, but I want to be positive. I feel like we have a fresh start available to us. And, voters need to have confidence in their government. And last fall, when the voters overwhelmingly passed Clean Missouri, what they were basically saying is they expect better of their public officials. So, although this is a sad time for St. Louis County because of these, allegations, I think that we do have a fresh start. When
we talk about this issue, these issues are intertwined with Better Together.
Yes.
But let's first talk about Steve Stenger. His time in government, it was controversial. There seemed to be a system of challenging to get along with folks, and the folks he got along with best didn't win re-election.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing about this is kind of, as Representative McCreery said, is people deserve better. They elected you to do a job. They elected you out of trust because they trusted you to run their government efficiently, and then this happens. And we wonder why people don't trust in government and trust in politics any longer. Is because every time they give their trust to someone, it comes out that they are abusing it. They're abusing that trust. They're abusing that power for something that benefits only them and not for the greater good. So I think that's the biggest portion of this. And with Better Together, to just roll it all into one, we'll get to it. I'll leave it.
But Jerry, seriously, when you talk about Clean Missouri, something you work with in the state Senate, maybe some of the things with Clean Missouri should have been applied to county governments, because frankly, if you're the St. Louis County executive, you probably move around more contracts and money than most any other person in the state outside maybe the Commissioner of Administration.
Yeah, absolutely. And they singled out, Clean Missouri singles out only the legislative body. It doesn't affect the executive branch. It doesn't affect anybody else except for guys like me, legislative staff. And perhaps it should be applied statewide.
I'm not saying you're not influential in the Capitol, maybe not as much as the St. Louis County executive.
Oh, by far, and that's not a bad thing.
Dave Barklage, what happens next?
I think we're going to see Sam Page do two things. One, I think you're going to see the council and the executive work hand in hand moving forward. I think it'll be an affirmation that the council was right on a lot of things, and an affirmation that they support Sam in his efforts to do one big thing immediately, and that is to make sure that they restore the integrity, get rid of pay-to-play politics. And then two, I think you're going to see real reforms. I think you've got a guy who is not your normal politician, and you would know that Sam and I have not been friends in the past.
Sure.
That we've been strong political opponents. But I got to tell you, he's incorruptible. He is smart, and I think he is determined, and he's giving up. You know, I don't know. I don't even want to say how much income a year to do this job. It's really back to rural public service. I don't think he'll do it unless he thinks he can really get something done, and I think that's going to be his agenda to, leave no stone unturned.
We'll see how that Van Buren Bulldog does.
That's right.
Representative Bosley, you've been an outspoken critic of Better Together.
Yes.
There was a draft of an earlier proposal that would have put the county executive at the time, Steve Stenger, in running the county or the big metro city government. That's one of the things you've criticized. There's a bill moving through the House. I saw.
Yeah.
Seems like there were some deals cut, and some of the legislation got a little prioritized this week, and that was one of the winners in that standoff.
Yes.
Tell me where that bill is, and tell me if you were an elevator, what would you say your opposition to Better Together was?
Right now, I feel like it's being blown up right before our eyes as the opposition goes, because everything that they've presented, it's been retracted and then put out again, and then you now have this one person who was supposed to be the I like to say the kingpin of all of the St. Louis metropolitan area and St. Louis County, who is now being indicted for charges, and it is blowing up in their faces as we speak. So I just think that if you had done your job 5 years out, you've been working on this plan for 5 years, and now you didn't foresee this, while people were telling you over and over again that that's something is wrong with this system, and you just continue to push forward without even having the input of the people. And you have HJR 54, which was third read and passed overwhelmingly out of the House. Shout out to Representative Dean Plocker for that, getting that done. HJR 37 is still on a perfection calendar. We need to get this done because it'll be a competing amendment if it gets to the ballot with Better Together, if they get all of the signatures that they require. So it'll kind of be like the Amendment 2 and Amendment 3 with medical marijuana.
Could people that oppose Better Together get their signatures independent of the government?
Yeah, they can. You got the Board of Freeholders if they like to. You got 5,000 from St. Louis City, 15,000 from St. Louis County that they can enact this board.
Well, could you get a statewide amendment for people that oppose Better Together? Could they go get their signatures, or do they have to have the government put it on the ballot?
No, you definitely can get it that way too. I just think it'll be a little bit harder when you don't have $23 million to spend to actually run a campaign. I think that is the biggest portion that we're facing, the roadblock that we're facing with trying to get an initial petition like that.
David Barklage, where this stands in relation to Steve Stenger with the bills moving in the legislature, I do think maybe there is some renewed momentum towards the legislature passing something that maybe puts St. Louis over it.
I think that they've made some missteps. I think that with Sam Page coming in, the freeholder board, which is already in the law that doesn't require a constitutional amendment, is going to become much more real. It's going to give an opportunity or a counter to Better Together to really look at meaningful change, but to do it in a process that allows local vote. And I agree. You saw the test vote in the legislature you had 25 votes in the Senate. I think it's a train that's moving, and I just think there's some fundamental flaws. I think they meant to do good. I think they want to do good, but I think it's a misfire.
Mr. McCreery, looks like Wednesday night maybe some folks in rural Missouri came up short in a legislative deal, but St. Louis seemed to have won, which is a recurring theme in state government, with moving the St. Louis legislators moved their anti-Better Together proposal forward. Where's that at now?
Well, I've never seen anything bring Republicans and Democrats, urban and rural, together more than this proposal. And it's nothing about the proposal of merging the city and the county. It's about just a blatant slap in the face to undermine the democratic process. So, and that's really what has brought people together. We're very angry that our vote in St. Louis City and County isn't the only vote that counts.
Well, folks in rural Missouri were minding their own business on their farm, and St. Louis folks came and said, "We want you to put this in the Constitution" a long time ago.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It wasn't rural people that did that to St. Louis.
That was a long, long time ago, and we have a process in place to make corrections, and that is that Board of Freeholders process. So I think my rural colleagues the other night, when we passed that resolution in the House, realized that if it can happen to St. Louis City and County, it can happen to them, and they're not going to stand for it.
Do you really think that?
Yes.
Yes.
I think the most folks, I think, agree with you on the part about maybe St. Louis should have its own vote and how they do it. But do you really think that there's a true effort to merge Texas and Shannon counties?
There's not, but the point is if it can happen to us, it can happen to anybody, and we should not allow this to happen. It's anti-democratic.
What's the impact of the Steve Stenger indictment and now plea on Better Together?
Well, I think it just shows that we know what we're doing here. We can take care of our own problems. We don't need outstate Missouri voters to come in and fix things for this region. We can take care of it on our own. And they're going to see great progress very quickly.
You know, I think maybe there's a gun store owner in Scotland County that doesn't know who Steve Stenger is or care. And frankly, maybe the corruption in St. Louis may make them more apt to vote for something that changes it. I just don't know that anybody in rural Missouri knew who Steve Stenger was or particularly cared.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with the personality. I think there is a perception in outstate Missouri of the region, but St. Louis is such an integral part of our state economy, and as far as the largest metro area in the state, there is concern. But whether or not the rural Missouri should try to enact their will upon the region, that's a whole other question.
So I'm glad we're joined here by a guy from Malden. People in Malden may not care what the government of St. Louis is, but they do care about farming. In the Senate, there was a lengthy filibuster. The floor leaders in their route and ran all night into the morning. And it was basically about, we had Farm Bureau, the cattlemen, the soybean guys, all of Missouri ag community and the governor pushing for a bill to make it where you can't restrict where you can farm, break down what it actually accomplished.
Yeah, and that ties exactly into what you're saying, and this is where the urban versus rural divide exists. And it's unfortunate, you know, I think Senator Brown stood up on the floor and said, you know, I think that for all intents and purposes, we need to let St. Louis take care of St. Louis problems, but out here in the rural area, even though it affects the entire state, we're the ones that are there, we're the ones that are closest to it, and we understand exactly what the needs and issues are. And someone that doesn't know the difference between a turn row and a skid row, they probably don't have that, you know, I don't know how effective their input is in that.
Representative McCreery, I heard Chris Koster one time say, you need a governor that knows the difference between a herbicide and a pesticide. You're a St. Louis lawmaker, I'm just a simple hillbilly. But it does seem like there's no barbecue at Pappy's without a good rural Missouri hog farm.
Well, you know, I actually agree with you, but the point you're missing on this pro-factory farm bill is that it is about local control. There are 20 counties that have local elected officials at the county level that have put health ordinances in place to protect their constituents. I think it's not the legislature's place to undo the will of local elected officials. So I do think that it's not the Missouri legislature's place. We need to stand up for citizens, not corporations.
And I agree with you too in a certain sense, but I'd also say that the individual's right to make a living and feed this nation too should not be impeded upon, whether it's local or state.
Representative Bosley, you've been a big proponent of having St. Louis problems solved by St. Louis folks. When rural Missouri folks like the Farm Bureau and the cattlemen come to you and say, let us handle farming, is it going to still be the same, or is local control just something that works when it works for the argument?
I think local control always works. I think that the people always have a say-so. If they don't, they have elected you to do this job. So if your executives or your electeds on the local level have already come up with something, you've entrusted them with that. So I think it is a local control issue, but at the same time, I'm not a farmer. I don't know really much what goes out in the rural areas. I would love to learn and love to actually see more and gather more information to make a more educated argument on the stance. But local control is local control. It should always be the first and foremost thing that we do in the legislature.
So this filibuster went till it went past about 7 in the morning. Governor Parson is a Polk County farmer that gets up about 5, so it kind of I think you got to hear the last part of it. Does this move through the House?
You know, I absolutely. Absolutely.
I think he signs it in a big ceremony, right?
I do. Look, I mean, we know this issue has been going on for a long time, and the fact that they got it done this late in the session just shows the momentum, and it's done, I think.
Speaking late, we're late in our first segment. We'll be right back on This Week in Missouri Politics after this, but first go to SheltonMissouri.com. History of Missouri, one county at a time. Check out our latest episode in St. Francis County. Got to sit and listen to Kevin Engler talk about the history of St. Francis County. North County, South County is not just a St. Louis thing. It is a St. Francis County thing. We'll be right back after this.
For more than a century, the St. Louis Carpenters Union has shaped our communities. Through trusted alliances, we deliver skilled professional craftspeople while our business partners provide the kind of quality jobs that keep our economy humming. It's a blueprint that has worked since 1882. Turning Missouri into a right-to-work state stalls progress, wipes out jobs, and kills momentum. Right to work is wrong for everyone. Let's keep Missouri moving forward. Visit carpdc.org to learn more.
All across Missouri, our new car and truck dealers are building strong local economies. When you buy a car or truck in Missouri, you're helping to support over 20,000 Missouri families who rely on the auto industry for good-paying local jobs. You're also helping fund our communities, schools, first responders, and our roads because dealers generate millions of dollars in tax revenue. Missouri's automobile dealers have been the foundation of our communities for generations and for generations to come. The Missouri Automobile Dealers Association, the heart of Missouri.
At Ameren, Missouri, we know what light can do. It draws people together and chases monsters away. And if you shine it in the right direction, it will light the path for the next generation, showing them what their tomorrow could look like, and spotlighting the possibilities that lay in front of them. Investing in our community by lighting the way forward. That's energy at work. Ameren, Missouri.
Welcome back to This Week in Missouri Politics. Let's talk about a good thing now. General Motors announced they're considering Wentzville for a $1 billion expansion project. Representative McCreery, you've dealt with economic development issues in the past. What a great day for Missouri.
It's a huge win, and I'm hoping the legislature realizes that we have kind of a narrow window of time to get some things done. So again, I think this is something that's going to bring people together from both sides, and we're going to prove to Missouri that we can act quickly in order to bring jobs and help with eco-devo.
David Barklage, I think there is some people that question, is this current legislature set up to accomplish big things? Can they actually come together and get this done? Or are we going to run into issues as we have in the past with senators trying to say it's not worth it, or we're not going to take a credit or whatever? If you don't give GM incentives here, there's 40 other states that'll be knocking on their door.
You know, I mean, I think it's yet to be seen. My sense is that they will be able to get past it, you know, as evidenced by some of the more recent actions of the legislature. But you never know. I mean, there is the LIHTCs and other things that can start to get everything tied together, and people start to get frayed and tired and make poor decisions. But I think that if we have any chance, or have ever had a chance with this leadership team, I think they can bring it through. Rob Visco was very practical, very straightforward. He should be able to do the right thing.
Well, that'll be the question. I mean, the Senate seems like they can step up and probably handle something like this. But there's probably some people that question whether the House can.
I think that as the representative said, this is much bigger than personalities or anything else. So we're talking about the entire state when you're talking this kind of investment, this kind of employment opportunities. We've taken a lot of our economic development arrows out of the quiver, so to speak, I think, in my opinion. And I think that there's probably going to have to be some type of, we can come together and beat out the details, and I think you'll see a good product come out.
You serve in the House. I mean, this probably, if this comes to fruition and General Motors is ready to go,
yeah,
it seems like the Senate probably can handle a bill like that. They have all session. Can the House handle something like this?
I think the House can handle something like this. We have some very capable people, and I think that we are very capable of doing this. But also, I just want to point out, if we get this done, we need to also make sure that there is something in place for minorities to be included in this process. We don't have anything on a state level that has a percentage of minority inclusion within the contract or building or anything like that. So even though this will bring a lot of union jobs, we need to make sure that people who are building on this are of this state are a part of that as well. So maybe 30%, how St. Louis City passed something where you have to have 30% minority inclusion in your construction. I think that is also a piece that we need to make sure that we're being very diligent about and paying attention to.
I tend to think if this happens, it's because Speaker Haar rolls up his sleeves and one-on-one has to work members. I don't think it'll be as easy as folks think, and I think it'll be a huge part. And if it happens, I think it's probably all on him.
Well, I mean, we have a ticking clock now. You know, we've got 2 weeks left in session. We adjourn at 6 p.m. on Friday, May 17th. But I also feel like this might be a big enough deal that we might have to have a special session. We can't miss this opportunity.
I would like to point out, and you speak to the special session, you remember a special session not too long ago when down in southeast Missouri, a lot of people said that special session wasn't going to help anything, that Noranda was going to close and was gone forever. Now, Noranda hasn't come back.
The special session, same thing.
But Mag 7's down there, and it put a lot of our friends and neighbors back to work.
I think that in the day, you know, it'll have to be if anybody in the House understands the economic development and actually can deal straight and forthright with people, it's going to probably be the Speaker.
And he will. I have ultimate faith in him. I think he's going to do a great job.
Representative McCreery, somebody, one of your colleagues resigned this week. You're on the Ethics Committee, so there's a lot you can't say. But Duran McGee, a leading kind of up-and-coming star in the Democratic caucus, that left the legislature around some allegations dealing with workplace issues. What can you tell us? And I know, again, you're restricted quite a bit.
I appreciate that. Well, I think that what happened this week shows that, well, first of all, we know that behavior like this has been tolerated for far too long in these positions. And I think what the Ethics Committee decided to do through its process of investigation is saying that the Missouri House is no longer going to tolerate these kinds of behaviors, and that we're going to hold people accountable, and that we are demanding that people have workplaces that are safe from harassment.
You know, David, this went on. I know when you came in and you served some time administrating the Senate, these issues are tough to deal with. We're talking about elected officials or an fishbowl, but the representative resigning seems like that there was a big push by Speaker Richardson to put this committee. Pretty impactful. I think it's been derided a little bit with investigating some rumors, but this was a serious matter. Looks like they came to a reasonable conclusion on it.
Look, I'll take it even further. I think the past history of the legislature and their handling this is abhorrent. And ridiculous. It was hidden from public. There was all kinds of things. When we took control of the Senate, we saw on both sides of the aisle. And I think this is a good first step showing the system can work and that people are finally actually paying attention. I just got to say is that I think it's one of the better things that I've seen, and I think Todd Richardson does deserve great credit, and also his colleagues for getting it carried on.
Representative Bosley, this is a colleague of yours that you knew very well, a pretty accomplished legislator, moving on with his life back to Kansas City, but I think maybe it is a broader message about that committee can process things, not just rumors. Yeah,
they definitely can, and I commend the Ethics Committee for their job and doing a job well done. However, I also want to point out that, you know, this is a blow, so to speak, to the better testament of government of what we should be focusing on and bettering Missourians' lives. So it's a hard pill to swallow, so to speak, on both instances. So I just think that we should be doing our best to focus more on other things outside of this. We attacked the issue is taken care of. It has been done. Let's continue to move forward, and let's heal from this.
I think that probably happens pretty quick, don't you?
Yeah, yes and no. And the reason why I say yes and no is because a lot of people like to keep things drug up, and they like to bring things to light all the time. And I think that we need to focus on bigger issues like Better Together, just to throw that back in.
Understand it. Jerry Brown, the Senate came to an agreement on highway, on fixing some of the bridges the governors wanted. I think it mostly put Roy Blunt on, give him a very challenging situation. The bill the Senate passed now moves on to the House. What are you hearing from the House? Does that get through?
I haven't heard. I wasn't involved in those negotiations. Senator Brown does sit on the Transportation Committee. We've been looking at these issues. I think it'll be interesting more to see. The Conference Committee starts on the budget next week, and it will be interesting to see what the funding mechanism is on some of these projects too, whether it's bonded, what percentage is bonded, what percentage is funded out of general revenue. And I think that's one of the few, that's probably the most contentious issue that's been left open as a conferenceable item.
Sure.
Budget.
I mean, what do you think? The bill you're getting from the Senate, it definitely is going to be challenging for Senator Blunt. It was essentially the Senator Blunt can fix it bill.
Right. And I do have great faith in him. I think he's a great senator, but wow, a lot of pressure. But I'm frustrated that we've not had a discussion in either chamber about going back to the voters with an ask for an increase in the fuel tax that actually is written in plain English. You know,
do you think that needs a little time, though?
No, because the voter, it was written so poorly. It was, it had something about like Olympic earnings being tax-free, and then something, it looked like some shell game with like the highway patrol. I think we need to have a 5-word question to the voters, and I think it would pass. People on the roads know that we have to do
If you could write
something.
a 5-word question, I think you should get a law license just right there.
All right,
all
right.
Just hand it right to you.
I'm on it.
Does this happen? I mean, can Missouri do big things like this?
Yes, we can. We're the show me state. What do you mean? This is what we are built on. We are built on this to show you what you're supposed to be doing. We are the greatest. We're the greatest state in the country, and I will say that with a straight face.
There's a few members of the state senate that instead of a bat signal has a blunt signal. They want to flash up in the air and say, "Make this work." David Barklage, I mean, essentially the state senate said, "Roy Blunt, come save us," right?
Yeah, and you know, if you were depending on someone, Roy Blunt would be the guy you want.
That's fair. Yeah.
He is probably one of the most powerful men and understated in Washington, D.C., but I agree with him. We just got polling back from the field yesterday, and in July, the right track, wrong direction was upside down by 20 points. Today, it's over 54% of the voters believe it's in the right track. Parsons' numbers have gone way up, and the legislature, Congress is in single digits in terms of its approval rating. The Missouri legislature is right side up for the first time in a while.
Give me the straight scoop, though. I mean, the Senate passes this bill. It's creative.
Yes.
I think they should have included an amendment for an actual blunt signal to come out from the Capitol. Can the Speaker get this through the House?
Yeah, and people got to understand compromise is part of the process. We have a bipartisan legislature. Every Democrat, whether in the minority or not, liberal, conservative, progressive, or whatever, deserves to have a voice. And I think it's good to see.
Roy Blunt loses that election. This bill's a joke, right?
Yeah, well, that's true. But it's just good to see that people are working together. You don't see the partisan tones in Jeff City that you see in Washington.
Representative McCreery, with a minute left, who won the week?
I think our new St. Louis County Executive, Sam Page, won the week.
Who won the week?
Harris Stowe won the week because we
Have you ever had a week they didn't win the week?
You know what? That is to be debated. But yes, Harris Stowe won the week this week. We got $500,000 in the budget for them, amended on the floor for their STEM labs, which is much needed. They had one lab, and hopefully this money will be able to go to a greater use of building them a second lab. So they won the week for
Who won the week? David Barklage?
Jared Brown. He's back. He showed character. He's all heart. He's spent his whole life in public service, and I expect greater things from him moving forward.
Oh. Yeah. Winner of the week on the set. Who are you going to say?
I guess I'm obligated to say David Barklage. No, actually, we have spent a lot of time in session this week, and in the previous weeks, we put a lot of hours in, and I'd like to give a shout out to the unsung heroes of the Capitol, which is the ladies in enrolling and engrossing, the people in CSI, the people in legislative research, Senate research, and the Senate appropriations staff.
Always hear people maybe make a derisive joke in the summer when somebody maybe takes that off a little early. They don't think about the day that they worked all the way to the next day.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're back at 8 o'clock.
Absolutely.
I'm going to say Governor Parson, Farm Bureau, and the ag community for passing the farming bill. But I want to take one moment and talk about somebody else. The executive producer of the show, Rachel Herndon Dunn. She's leaving to start her own publishing stuff. She's been a great help to Rachel. Thank you for everything. I can promise you all there'll be no This Week in Missouri Politics Cider. We'll see you next week on This Week in Missouri Politics.
This Week in Missouri Politics, sponsored by the Missouri Association of Career Fire Protection Districts, Spire, and Sterling Bank.